Have you ever noticed how, like, the modern apology has completely evolved into its own bizarre genre of performance art?
Oh my God, 100%.
Like, we used to get these formal press conferences with tailored suits and carefully drafted statements.
Right, a publicist standing right behind them.
Exactly. But now we get a ring light, a messy bed, and a millionaire attempting to convey profound remorse while inexplicably shirtless.
It's honestly a fascinating psychological study in deflection.
It really is. And frankly, analyzing the absolute mess of other people's lives is literally the only thing keeping me grounded this week. Babes, it's Thursday.
So happy fucking Thursday, babes.
We are so glad to have you, and babes, if you haven't already, share this podcast with a friend. Pour yourself a massive glass of whatever gets you through the week, because you are going to want to sit at this table with us.
The wine is flowing, the spiraling has officially begun, and tonight's chaos level is dangerously high.
Dangerously high. Like, we need to discuss the James Charles controversy.
We have to.
If you missed this, babes, it is a masterclass in how an echo chamber completely distorts your grip on reality. Like, the internet has been spiraling ever since this dropped.
It really has, because when you spend years just insulated by wealth and brand deals and yes men, your baseline for what constitutes a normal human interaction shifts so dramatically.
So true. But let's lay out the timeline for the Snark squad who maybe haven't been glued to their phones today.
Right, what exactly kicked this whole mess off?
Okay, so the facts are basically that this girl sent him a DM, right?
Right, just a random message.
Yeah, explaining that she had just lost her job at Spirit Airlines.
Oh, wow.
I know. She's clearly in a desperate spot. And she asked if he would either share her GoFundMe link with his massive audience or, like, donate to it.
Which is a huge ask, but also people are struggling.
Exactly. And we have to pause here. Working at Spirit Airlines is already an incredibly demanding job. It's high stress, it's high volume customer service.
Totally. You are dealing with the general public at their absolute worst.
Right. So to lose that job in this economy, terrifying. Yeah. Times are genuinely tough for people right now. Inflation is out of control. The job market is a mess.
Precisely. And look, from a purely logistical standpoint, an influencer with millions of followers receives thousands of requests like this every single week.
Well, thousands.
So the standard psychologically sound approach is to just ignore the message because you simply cannot save everyone.
Right.
Or if a specific story really moves you, you quietly and anonymously fund it. What you absolutely do not do is turn someone's financial devastation into content.
But that is exactly what happened. Instead of just scrolling past, he decides to make a dedicated video.
Of course he does.
He puts this girl on blast. He calls her lazy. He calls her entitled. And he literally tells her to get a job.
The audacity.
I was viscerally angry watching it. He even made a point to mention that she didn't follow his account, as if clicking a follow button is like the universally required currency for basic human empathy.
See, that specific detail pointing out that she wasn't a follower is incredibly telling to me.
Right. Like, why does that matter?
Because it reveals a purely transactional mindset.
Yeah.
It essentially implies, why should I care about your suffering if you haven't contributed to my engagement metrics?
Ugh, that is so gross.
It's a very bleak way of viewing humanity, but it also shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the current economic climate. You can't just walk outside and get a job today.
You really can't. But I want to push back for just a second, though, because I try to see every angle.
Okay, let's hear it.
Is it possible that being inundated with people asking for money every single day just burns out your empathy receptors? Like, if your inbox is a constant stream of financial demands, maybe you just snap.
I mean, that's a fair question. Compassion fatigue is a real psychological phenomenon.
Right.
However, compassion fatigue usually results in withdrawal or numbness. It results in, closing your direct messages or logging off.
That makes sense.
It does not typically result in setting up a camera, adjusting your lighting, editing a video, and actively choosing to publicly humiliate a vulnerable person for views.
Wow, yes.
That requires a proactive decision to punch down.
And the internet immediately recognized that power imbalance. People were furious. But here is the plot twist that I am still reeling from.
The best part.
GoFundMe, the actual corporate entity, stepped in.
Amazing.
They literally left a comment under a video discussing the drama, explicitly taking the girl's side and offering to help her.
Which is a fascinating corporate intervention. When a neutral fundraising platform breaks the fourth wall to publicly correct your behavior, you have severely miscalculated your PR strategy.
Curiously, GoFundMe was like, nope, we are not with him.
They recognize a PR win. They position themselves as the empathetic protector against the out-of-touch millionaire.
So the backlash obviously hits a boiling point, and he realizes he has to walk it back.
As they always do?
He posts an apology video.
Oh.
And this is where we get to the performance art aspect we talked about in the intro.
Here we go.
He is shirtless. He is sitting in bed. And he is very clearly reading from off-camera cue cards. I need you to explain the mechanics behind these visual choices, because they make absolutely zero sense to me.
Oh, I would love to. Let's break down the semiotics of the influencer apology, because it is a very specific, calculated formula.
Guys.
The goal of these videos is to manufacture intimacy and vulnerability by sitting in bed, seemingly unstyled, without a shirt on.
Which is just so weird.
It is, but the subliminal message you were trying to send is, I am stripped down, I am raw, I am speaking to you from my most private space because I am so deeply affected by this.
But it doesn't read as vulnerable at all. To me, it reads as completely disrespectful.
Exactly. The execution completely undermines the intent, because an apology to a working-class person about their livelihood is a serious matter.
Very serious.
When you deliver that apology while casually lounging half-naked, it signals that you don't actually take the situation seriously.
All right, like put some clothes on.
It creates a cognitive dissonance for the viewer. You are saying, I deeply regret my actions, but your body language and setting are saying, I couldn't even be bothered to put on a sensible crew neck before reading my publicist's notes.
A sensible crew neck, literally. And his actual excuse in the video was that he assumed she had just copied and pasted the message to a bunch of influencers.
Which is a classic deflection technique. It shifts the focus from his cruel reaction to her hypothetical method of communication.
All right, making her the problem again.
Even if she did copy and paste the message, which, by the way, is a highly efficient way to run a fundraising campaign when you are facing eviction, how does that justify calling her lazy?
It doesn't.
It doesn't address the core issue at all. The absolute audacity of someone whose entire career is based on digital content creation lecturing a recently unemployed airline worker about the realities of hard work.
That is exactly what struck a chord with so many people. Watching someone who lives in a mansion, whose biggest daily stressor is, like, an algorithm change, mock the desperation of an everyday person, it just highlights this massive cultural disconnect.
Do you think influencers completely lose touch with reality once they get rich?
Honestly, yes. I think cancel culture exhaustion is so real right now. Yeah. Why do we even give these people platforms if they just repeat the cycle?
It speaks to a broader exhaustion, definitely. A creator does something outrageous for engagement, faces immediate backlash, posts a heavily curated, aesthetically messy apology video, and then returns to their regular programming a week later.
It's exhausting.
The apology isn't for the action. The apology is just a toll they have to pay to resume their business model.
It makes you wonder if they ever actually learn, or if they just learn how to better manage the optics. Honestly, this level of disconnection from reality might be the only thing rivaling the cast of Southern Hospitality right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is why I am declaring that we desperately need to eat our feelings before we transition into our recap.
I fully support this intervention. Let the record show that we are currently sitting in front of a plate of homemade meatballs stuffed with fresh mozzarella cheese.
And babes, let me tell you, it is life-changing.
Truly.
I am deeply emotionally attached to the concept of the cheese pull.
You really are.
I am. You bite into this perfectly seasoned meatball, and there is just this glorious elastic string of molten dairy connecting it to your mouth. I will argue that stuffed foods are the absolute elite tier of comfort food.
They are definitely up there.
Why just have a regular meatball when you can have a meatball harboring a secret melted treasure inside?
Well, if we look at the culinary mechanics of a stuffed meatball, it's all about textural dichotomy.
Oh boy, here comes the food critic.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You have the savory, heavily seasoned, slightly caramelized exterior of the ground meat. That provides the umami, the structural integrity.
Okay, structural integrity of a meatball. Go on.
But then you hit the center, which is mild, creamy, and unctuous. The contrast elevates the dish from a simple protein vehicle into something that requires active sensory engagement.
See, you are acting like a pretentious Michelin star food critic for absolutely no reason right now, but you are entirely correct.
Thank you.
But I have to ask, do you think making these at home makes a difference? Because I feel like when I order mozzarella sticks or stuffed apps at a restaurant, they never hit the same way.
It's a completely different emotional experience. Restaurant appetizers are designed for mass production.
That's true.
They rely on industrial fryers, standardized freezing processes, and a uniform breading that often masks the actual quality of the cheese.
Right, it's just grease.
Exactly. When you make a stuffed meatball at home, it's rustic. You control the fat ratio of the meat, you control the seasoning, and you aren't deep frying it into oblivion. It feels grounding.
Grounding is exactly the word. Mozzarella objectively improves literally everything it touches.
Fact.
Having a bad day. Mozzarella. Watching a millionaire bully an airline worker. Mozzarella. Watching the Republic Lounge crew completely unraveled in Punta Cana.
You need a whole plate of these to brace yourself for that.
You really do. These meatballs are the only things keeping me grounded, because watching them almost induced a full-blown panic attack.
We definitely need the emotional padding. So let's pour another splash and dive into the recap. We are looking at Southern Hospitality, Season 4, Episode 11.
Yes. Appropriately titled, This Beach is Crazy.
And crazy it was.
This episode was a marathon of emotional volatility. Let's start with the church visit, because this was such a profound moment for Michaels.
It really was.
He takes a select group of his closest friends to the local church he grew up attending in the Dominican Republic. And you immediately see a completely different, incredibly vulnerable side of him.
It was a striking departure from his usual hyper-managed nightclub boss persona. He is stepping back into a space that holds a massive amount of childhood history, religious trauma, and family memory.
Exactly. Like, he starts crying at the altar. He talks about feeling his grandmother's presence in the room.
That was intense.
It was. And he expresses how incredibly empowering and freeing it feels to stand in that specific religious space as an openly gay man.
Yeah.
Bridging his past with his authentic present. It was genuinely touching to watch.
It was a beautiful moment.
But of course, the peace does not last. Because while Michaels is having the spiritual breakthrough, Emmy is back at the resort, absolutely fuming because she wasn't invited.
This is where we have to analytically examine Emmy's reaction, because her inability to decenter herself is just staggering.
It's wild.
How do you take your friend's deeply personal, religious, trauma-informed homecoming and instantly reframe it as a personal slight against you?
Okay, I am going to play devil's advocate for a second, though.
Oh, please do.
Because I want to understand her perspective. Emmy thought she was part of Michaels' inner circle. They worked together closely, they socialized together constantly. When you are on a group trip and a VIP list is suddenly created for an excursion and you are left off of it, the human reaction is to feel rejected. It stings. Isn't it normal for her to feel a little hurt?
Feeling a private sting of rejection is entirely normal. Human beings are wired to want inclusion in the tribe.
Right.
The issue is not her internal feeling. The issue is her external behavioral response.
Okay, true.
When Michaels returns, he attempts to explain his boundary. He says very clearly that he only brought the specific people who have been actively, emotionally supportive of his journey, people who make him feel entirely safe to be vulnerable.
Right. He was protecting his peace.
Exactly. And a secure, supportive friend would hear that and say, I'm so glad you had the support system you needed for such a heavy moment.
Right. Not make it about themselves.
But Emmy's response is to immediately demand comfort from him. She essentially says, but what about me? Am I a bad friend? It is a textbook deflection tactic.
It is so exhausting.
Instead of supporting him post-catharsis, she forces Michaels to manage her anxiety about her own status in the group. She weaponizes her insecurity to make his spiritual experience about her FOMO.
Imagine coming back from one of the most emotionally draining experiences of your life, and the first thing you have to do is coddle your coworker.
I would lose my mind.
But to Michaels' credit, he doesn't back down. He tells her straight up that she walks all over him, and he wasn't in a place where he wanted to be silenced.
It was a rare moment of direct boundary setting. But for someone with Emmy's communication style, a boundary is often perceived as an act of war.
Oh, 100%.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the final dinner of the trip. The infamous Under the Sea Last Supper.
Oh my goodness, the aesthetics alone. Everyone is dressed in net tops, starfish accessories, looking like a highly stylized, chaotic shipwreck.
It was a choice.
And Michaels implements a strict no phones rule at the table.
Which is brilliant psychological warfare in the context of reality television.
It really is.
By confiscating their phones, he strips away their primary coping mechanism. They cannot scroll away from the awkwardness. They cannot text each other under the table to coordinate their arguments. It forces them to remain entirely present in the discomfort.
But before the human confrontation even begins, we are introduced to the true star of the episode,
Oh, yes.
the feral resort cat.
A completely unpredictable variable enters the chat.
I was dying. This tiny, innocent, probably just hungry little cat wanders up to the table looking for a scrap of mahi-mahi.
Just minding its own business.
And Maddi reacts as if a fully grown apex predator has breached the perimeter. She is recoiling, she is panicking, she is treating this cat like a deadly threat.
It was a spectacular overreaction.
I was howling, Reddit was howling too, everyone was saying the cat had main character energy.
Completely. From a behavioral standpoint, Maddie's intense fear response to a 6-pound domesticated animal suggests her nervous system was already completely dysregulated by the interpersonal tension at the table.
Oh, totally.
The cat was just the catalyst for her anxiety to physically manifest. But visually, it was incredible. The cat was completely unbothered, just exuding confidence while the humans unraveled.
It was the perfect chaotic opening act for the main event. Because once the cat settles down, the real claws come out.
Pun intended.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Michaels takes the floor and formally calls out Emmy for disrespecting him. And then Mia, who basically operates like a tactical commander, jumps in.
She really does.
She demands that Emmy take accountability for the specific lies she has been spreading around Charleston.
Mia is incredibly effective in these confrontations because she doesn't rely on emotion. She relies on chronology and verbatim quotes. She corners you with your own words.
She really does.
Yeah.
She points out that Emmy has been running around telling people that Brad was stalking her, that he was aggressively banging on her door, and heavily implying that he intentionally saw her naked in the bathroom.
We need to pause and examine the gravity of that language.
Yes, please.
Using words like stalking or implying predatory behavior are not casual reality TV exaggerations. Those are accusations that can permanently damage a person's reputation and livelihood.
Exactly. It's not a joke.
When you weaponize language of abuse to garner sympathy for yourself, you cross a very dangerous line.
And you could see the toll it took on Brad. He confronts her at the table, and he is visibly heartbroken. He tells her that her outlandish lies have literally brought him to tears.
It was hard to watch.
He says he was holding out hope that the friend he knew was still in there, but you could see the exact moment the realization washed over him that the Emmy he trusted was just gone.
So how does Emmy respond when presented with undeniable facts and a friend's genuine pain?
Oh, we know how she responds.
She doesn't address the accusation. She doesn't apologize for the specific words used. She begins to hyperventilate. She starts sobbing uncontrollably.
The classic white woman tears.
Huh?
And with that waterproof mascara, I might add, which is just a rookie mistake. But I have to ask, is it possible she is having a genuine panic attack? Like, when you are suddenly cornered by an entire table of people, the fight-or-flight response kicks in. Maybe she physically couldn't breathe.
I mean, it is entirely possible that she is experiencing real physiological distress. However, we have to look at the function of that distress within the conversation.
Okay, what do you mean?
Whether it is a conscious strategy or an unconscious defense mechanism, severe crying acts as a conversational kill switch.
A kill switch, wow. That's the perfect way to describe it.
Yes, the moment someone begins hyperventilating, the social contract shifts. The priority of the group instantly changes from, we need to hold this person accountable for their harmful lies, to, we need to ensure this person has oxygen.
Oh my God, you are so right.
She effectively shifts the dynamic so that she is no longer the perpetrator of harm. She is the fragile victim in need of rescue. It's emotional judo. You flip the opponent's momentum to protect yourself.
And it is so frustrating because she couldn't even name what she was crying about. When Mia asked what she was apologizing for, she just kept repeating, I'm sorry, without acknowledging the actual lie.
Deflection at its finest.
But the rest of the girls were simply not buying the performance this time. Mia and Julia literally had to physically walk away from the table because they were struggling to stifle their laughter.
When a tactic is overused, it loses its efficacy. The group has built up an immunity to her tears. They recognize the pattern. Lie, get caught, hyperventilate, demand comfort.
And people on Reddit were literally theorizing. Like, is she on Adderall? Are substances involved? Or is she just purely delusional?
It's a valid question when the reactions are that disproportionate. Even TJ, who historically tries to play the peacemaker, struggles to defend her. She eventually claims that if her fiancé Will were there, he would destroy everyone at the table.
Which is such an absurd defense. Nobody is physically attacking her. They're simply asking her to stand by the words she chose to speak. You don't need your fiancé to protect you from your own vocabulary.
It's a complete refusal of self-reflection. It is a hallmark of someone who lacks the internal framework to process guilt. It is easier to believe the entire world is aggressively bullying you than to admit you behaved maliciously.
So true. Speaking of internal frameworks, though, let's pivot to someone who is actually doing the incredibly hard work of holding it together. Maddi.
Yes. While Emmy is imploding at dinner, Maddi is gearing up for a massive professional milestone.
Maddi's international DJ set. This was a fascinating shift in tone for the episode.
Gosh, it really was.
She is backstage, and she is terrified. She is pacing, her anxiety is through the roof, and she opens up about the severe health issues she has been battling behind the scenes.
Right, she mentions a lot of things.
She talks about managing her sobriety, dealing with celiac disease, severe IBS, and GERD.
That is a brutal constellation of chronic conditions to manage simultaneously.
It really is.
And when you factor in the environment of nightlife, which is inherently disruptive to circadian rhythms, highly stressful, and centered around alcohol consumption, it is a recipe for severe physiological strain.
I completely related to this part. Dealing with stomach issues is so draining, which, honestly, perfect excuse to take a sip of wine and praise these meatballs again.
Cheers to that.
But she even admits that the collective impact of these health issues is causing very real fears about potential infertility.
Yeah.
That hit me hard.
She is very heavy.
It grounds the reality TV drama in very relatable existential dread. When your body feels like a hostile environment and you still have to go out and perform at a high level, it is paralyzing.
The gut-brain axis is a powerful thing. Her physical ailments are undoubtedly exacerbating her psychological anxiety and vice versa.
Totally.
And from a professional standpoint, the stakes are immense. She hasn't performed a set of this scale in months. She is in a foreign country. She feels a desperate need to prove that her music career is viable.
Right. If she fails here, the narrative becomes that she can't handle the pressure.
Exactly.
But she doesn't fail.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Bradley, or should I say Joey Bottles, steps up in a surprisingly grounded way.
He really did.
He pumps her up, tells her to focus, and reminds her not to sabotage her own dream. She gets on those decks, and she absolutely crushes it.
The crowd was loving it.
The crowd goes wild, she finds her rhythm, and you can see the relief wash over her. It was a moment of genuine empathy for me, just pure triumph.
It was a very necessary palate cleanser. Seeing someone overcome immense internal friction to achieve competence is deeply satisfying.
It really is.
But naturally, the ecosystem of Southern hospitality abhors a vacuum of drama.
Always.
While Maddi is succeeding, Emmy is quietly plotting her retaliation.
This brings us to what I think is the most calculated moment of the entire season. Emmy's calculated betrayal.
Let's unpack it.
So Emmy is pouting away from the crowd during Maddi's set. Molly, who is inherently sweet and naive, walks over to check on her.
Right.
Molly feels a sense of camaraderie because she knows what it feels like to be on the receiving end of Michael's anger.
Which is a fatal error on Molly's part.
Yeah.
Never expose your vulnerabilities to someone who is actively looking for ammunition. Seriously. Emmy uses this exact moment to drop a devastating bomb. She reveals to Molly that months ago, when the Republic Lounge management was deciding whether to fire Molly, they asked Michaels for his vote.
And we all know what he said.
And Michaels explicitly voted yes to fire her, despite lying to her face about it for months.
We have to unpack the strategy here because it is incredibly Machiavellian.
Yes, please.
Emmy did not share this information because she suddenly felt a moral obligation to be a good friend. She has harbored this secret for months.
Exactly.
She watched Molly cry over losing her job. She watched Michaels comfort Molly, positioning himself as her protector, who supposedly thought management to save her. Emmy knew the truth the entire time and chose to remain silent.
So why say it now? Like, the timing is so deliberate.
She weaponized the truth at this specific moment purely to get revenge on Michaels for the dinner confrontation.
Wow.
Michaels publicly humiliated her at dinner, so she decided to detonate his closest friendship. She justifies it to Molly by saying, "I know what it's like to be gaslit, so I need to be honest with you." That is so manipulative.
It is a brilliant disguise. She dresses up vindictive revenge in the costume of female empowerment and radical honesty.
It is so dark. I was spiraling over this because, on one hand, Emmy is completely using Molly as a pawn. But on the other hand, Michaels is being such a snake as a manager.
He really is.
I saw someone on Reddit say managers shouldn't be besties with their employees, and I completely agree. He lied to Molly's face for months. He allowed her to believe he was her savior when he was the one who pulled the trigger.
And this highlights the fundamental flaw in the Republic Lounge hierarchy. This is what happens when you blur the lines between management and deeply enmeshed friend groups. It creates massive conflicts of interest.
But let me push back on that.
Mhm.
Isn't part of being a good manager understanding the strengths and weaknesses of your team? Like, if Mikkels genuinely believed Molly was detrimental to the business, wasn't voting yes just him doing his job?
Voting yes was him doing his job. Lying to her about it afterward and acting as her emotional confidant regarding the firing is where he crossed the line into manipulation.
Right, the lying is the issue.
He wanted the authority and power of a managerial role without having to face the social consequences of making an unpopular decision. He wanted to be the boss who fires you and the bestie who buys you a shot to make you feel better about being fired.
You cannot occupy both roles.
You can't, not without eventually fracturing the trust.
It is a devastating blow for Molly. She realizes that her reality for the past few months has been a complete fabrication. And Emmy just gets to walk away feeling justified.
It's a masterclass in shifting the heat, but thankfully the Punta Cana trip finally concludes and the crew returns to Charleston.
Yes, the Charleston returns, which gives us a little bit of character development before the tarot card chaos.
Let's start with Justin.
Justin talks to his mom about his romance with Charlie. He tells her the one red flag is that she's a massive Taylor Swift fan. And his mom actually loves this.
It's a very grounding, normal scene.
It is. And then Lake goes on a great date with Nessa. Lake proudly embraces being the Q in LGBTQ, despite ongoing fiction with her dad over her sexuality.
It's a narrative of building self-acceptance.
It's refreshing. But then Joe and Maddi go to Zach's Dyka to support Vanderpump Rules' Ale Luber. And to their absolute shock, Grace Lilly is there.
Doing tarot card readings, no less.
I literally gasped. Grace is reading tarot cards.
The archetype of the reality TV tarot card reader is a fascinating trope. Let's examine this. You have an individual whose own life is characterized by profound instability, substance issues, and a stark refusal to take accountability.
Right.
Yet they decide to position themselves as a spiritual authority capable of divining the futures and reading the energies of others.
It is the ultimate projection. It's like, if I can't control my own life, let me confidently tell you what's wrong with yours.
Exactly. It is a form of spiritual bypassing. By adopting the aesthetic of a mystic, the cards, the crystals, the vague language about auras, you grant yourself a superficial aura of enlightenment without having to do the grueling work of actual psychological healing.
So Grace pulls Maddi aside, claiming she's in AA and healing. But Maddi calls BS, citing a recent relapse. Maddi says Grace is always on a healing journey, but never arrives.
Which is the most astute observation Maddi has ever made.
And Grace just refuses accountability. I am so exhausted by Grace's delusions. Like, Reddit clocked her being on ketamine during pajama night. She's just acting like she's a spiritual guru now.
It's all aesthetic. There is no substance beneath the cards.
Which provides the perfect foundation for us to transition into our discussion segments. I'm so ready for this.
Let me adjust my mic and pour one last splash of wine. Okay, formally transitioning to the Snark Side Awards. Segment 1, who would get fired first?
The premise is simple. Debate which cast member would absolutely not survive a normal restaurant job, like an Olive Garden or an Applebee's.
A truly grueling, low-glamour environment.
Exactly. My vote is passionately for Grace Lilly. Picture it. She'd be reading Tarot to Table 4 while their apps get cold. She would be fired before her first shift ended.
That is highly probable. However, I have to vote for Emmy.
Why Emmy?
Because she would hyperventilate in the walk-in fridge the second a customer asks for extra ranch. You cannot survive the service industry if you view every minor inconvenience as a personal attack.
Okay, you win that round. Segment 2. Biggest main character energy. Who acted like the star of the episode?
Who is your pick?
I passionately argue it was the Punta Cana feral cat. That cat did not care about Michael's tears or Emmy's lies. It just wanted fish. That is main character energy.
I respect your advocacy for the cat. However, I argue it was Joe Bradley transforming into Joey Bottles at the Republic front door.
Really?
Yes, he was completely oblivious to all the trauma happening around him. He is just vibing, letting people into the club. To remain that blissfully unaware requires monumental commitment.
Joey Bottles just existing peacefully. Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Segment 3. Who is secretly the messiest? Who causes the most chaos while pretending to stay innocent?
I think we agree on this one. It's Michaels.
Oh, absolutely. Both agree it's Michaels. He plays the spiritual, enlightened peacemaker, but he literally lied to Molly's face for months about terminating her livelihood.
He orchestrates the downfall of an employee, and then he is the first one to hand them a tissue. It's chilling.
Chilling. Okay, final debate. Segment 4. Could they survive real jobs? Tying it back to the James Charles internet drama, could any of these reality TV stars survive working at Spirit Airlines?
Let's isolate the variables. Who survives this shift?
I think Mia could run a Spirit Airlines gate with military precision. She does not care about your feelings. She will charge you the oversized baggage fee without blinking.
Mia would thrive. But I think the rest of them would crumble the second a flight got delayed. Joey Bottles would run away, Emmy would cry stalker, and Meekles would lead a prayer circle.
I am actually crying at that visual. What an episode. I am leaning back in my chair. I am emotionally spent.
Agreed. The wine glasses are empty, the meatballs are consumed, and our vocal cords are frayed. Let's wrap it up.
I want to seriously thank the Snark Squad for hanging out and spiraling with us tonight. But we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the James Charles drama? Is a shirtless apology the worst PR move of the year?
Also, what is your ultimate go-to stuffed comfort food?
And which Southern Hospitality cast member do you trust the absolute least right now? Let us know in the comments.
Remind the Snark Squad to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes, babes. Stay shady, stay spiraling,
Yeah.
and we will see you on the Snark side.
Just remember, the next time you feel the urge to hyperventilate to get out of taking accountability, make sure you check for stray cats first.